Hello, I'm William Cooper, and you're listening to the Hour of the Time. Well, some of you may know this already, but WWCR, the station that the Hour of the Time is normally broadcast over, was burned to the ground at about 2 a.m. Central Standard Time, Sunday morning, April 4th. There were only two people in the station at the time of the fire, a female employee and a local minister who was broadcasting a show from the station at that time. Now, arson is suspected, strongly suspected, I might add, simply because of several curious coincidences, if you can call them that. We don't believe that they are coincidences. Number one, the building went up in a conflagration. In other words, there weren't any smoking wires, there was no smell of smoke anywhere. It didn't sputter and spud. It didn't start in a corner and slowly burn through the building. The whole building went up in a conflagration, which is extremely unusual unless fires are set in several places. Also, the sprinkler system, which is gravity fed from a very large holding tank, did not activate. I repeat, the sprinkler system did not activate. Also, something else happened that is more than just curious. Several of the local television stations had reporters with TV cameras on the scene before the fire department ever arrived, which seems to indicate that they were tipped off or had some prior knowledge that the fire was either in progress or was going to be set. No one will admit or acknowledge their prior knowledge. No one will tell us how they knew that the building was on fire in order for them to arrive before the fire department. But be that as it may, this show, because of that fire, was no longer able to broadcast worldwide as it had been doing for some time. And we have lost a lot of our listening audience out there. So if those of you who are listening can spread the word and let those who cannot listen know what is happening, that will give them some peace of mind. Now, I'm not a radio person, and you all know that. This is a tool that helps me educate the people of the world into what's coming in the future if we don't all wake up and become responsible and change it for the better. But our sponsor, Swiss America Trading, didn't want to lose their sponsorship of this show. Now, they care about what this show does. They care about the information that's being put out on this show. They believe in what I am doing. They believe in the Hour of the Time. When our friends at Swiss America Trading heard about the fire, they didn't desert us as most sponsors would and go looking for somebody else on some other radio show to sponsor. They went right to work finding us another place to broadcast. And within a matter of hours, folks, a new station was found, the one that you're listening to now, WRNO 7.395, thus making it possible for this program to continue to get the truth out to the people of the world. Now, you've heard me inform you about the trouble this country is in, both politically and financially, and the time to act is now, not later when it's too late, not later when you can look in the mirror and say, boy, was I dumb for not taking care of business when I had a chance. The time to act is now. Tonight's program is important, and I hope you have pen and paper by your side, because what I'm going to impart to you, I've said many, many, many times before, but I know there are many, many new listeners out there who have never heard this and don't know what's going on. And I know that those who have heard it before need constant reinforcement because we tend to only remember about 10% of what we ever hear or see. Now, you've heard it from me. Tonight you're going to hear it from a different source through me. You see, I received a letter not too long ago from one of our CAGI members. This letter is dated March 8, 1993. And it says, "Dear Mr. Cooper, enclosed are the passport photos, personnel information sheet, press cards, and CAGI agreement form in accordance with your instructions. Also enclosed is a copy of a newspaper article that I was able to get several newspapers to run. Included are some 30 pages of copied material to substantiate the information in the article." You see, our CAGI members, folks, are real heroes in my eyes. They're out there constantly digging and working to dig up facts, figures, and references and documentation that we use to bring you the truth of what's happening in the world, the truth that you're never shown on network TV, that you're never shown in the establishment television, that you never hear on establishment radio or in the print media. But you hear it on the hour of the time. And you might ask yourself, and you might ask your local media, your television stations, radio, why it is that you only hear it on the hour of the time. Now, this person, and I'm not going to give out his name, I never give out CAGI members' names unless they give me permission to do so. He says, "Somehow we have got to get the people to understand that the federal debt does not exist." And I've told you that before. The reason I'm going to give it to you from his point of view is because he's substantiated what I've told you before in his own investigations. And you've all heard me say this over and over again. Never believe anything that you hear on this show or on any other show from Dan Rather, from Chuck Harder, Tom Valentine, or Rush Limbaugh, from Ted Koppel, from the President of the United States, or even from your own mother, unless you can substantiate it with solid proof in your own research. If you're not willing to do the research, shut off your radio. You're wasting my time. He goes on, "These private bankers have never loaned any existing money to the government. They have created it out of thin air. Perhaps this realization, once it soaks into the consciousness of enough Americans, can lead to the level of active participation needed to restore morality and sanity to our government. Although I had taught economics," and I better not give that out because it might tend to identify him. "Although I had taught economics for several years and was certainly aware of the money-creating role of the Federal Reserve, I didn't really understand the truth and consequences of the conspiracy until 1988. I resigned effective December 1988 and have spent all of my time since researching the truth regarding the monetary hoax perpetrated on the citizens of the United States. When one first begins to grasp the magnitude of the hoax, denial sets in. And I know that many of you out there listening are already doing that." He goes on, "After all, how could the leaders of the United States have been taken in by such a ploy? Well, some out of ignorance and some out of greed. The reality, folks, is that a relatively small group of malevolent individuals have taken control of all gold and silver reserves of the United States and most other tangible wealth and left the citizens holding worthless pieces of paper or tokens worth less than 3% of their face value. The information contained in these enclosures is true and is sufficient to allow one to realize the following. Number one, the Federal Reserve creates money out of thin air to buy government bonds from the United States Treasury. They have never actually loaned any existing funds to the government. This being true, it is obvious that the citizens of the United States do not owe the owners of the Federal Reserve System. Rather, the owners of the Federal Reserve owe the citizens of the United States not only the unearned interest they have received since 1913, but also must return to the U.S. Treasury all of the gold and silver they have taken. The only portion of the national debt that is valid is for those government bonds purchased by individuals and organizations that do not have money-creating authority. 2. The Federal Reserve System is unconstitutional, and so is the fiat money issued by the system. 3. Majority stock of the Federal Reserve System is owned by foreign interest, and this has always been so. The United States government owns zero stock in the system. 4. Although the creation of the Federal Reserve System was supposed to stabilize money supply and prevent further panics, this has not been the case. The U.S. economy has experienced not only the Great Depression, but several other major recessions, including this one, folks, that destroyed many businesses and property owners, all caused by intended contractions of the money supply. At other times, the Federal Reserves greatly expanded money supply to purposely increase inflation, thus transferring wealth from the citizens to themselves. As an example, between 1964 and 1988, real gross national product increased 102%, while money supply increased 388%. And any increase of money supply over gross national product growth is pure inflation. 5. The huge sums of unearned interest the owners of the Federal Reserve System have received has been used to subjugate millions of peoples around the world under corrupt dictatorships, most of them communist. 6. The Federal Reserve System has actually taken ownership and possession of all the gold and silver formerly owned by the United States Treasury. 7. Since the existing money supply system uses only instruments of debt, and only the Federal Reserve System issues those instruments, it is literally impossible for the United States to pay off its imaginary debt. For example, as of March 1992, total deposits in all United States banks was $2.546 trillion, and total currency in circulation was $0.284 trillion, for a total deposits in currency of $2.830 trillion. The total imaginary federal debt as of fiscal year 91 was $3.502 trillion. The absurdity of the situation is readily apparent. There isn't enough money available to pay off the imaginary federal debt. And since the only way to obtain more money is to borrow it, obviously the government can never pay its imaginary debt under the existing system. If we add the $796 billion of consumer debt and the $346 billion state debt to the imaginary federal debt, one can see that the system is near collapse and will collapse soon unless the government restores a lawful and sane monetary system. It is indeed a pitiful sight to see United States congressmen, monetary officials, economists, and spokesmen for the president